old alternator. We now have a new alternator. My son did this, and I want to just quickly tell you, on a Honda Odyssey, the minimum things that you need to remove around and detach so that you can get the old alternator out and the new one in. And the first things you need to know is you definitely want to disconnect your power steering pump reservoir from the power steering pump. I would recommend going into Ace Hardware and getting some various size rubber stoppers, and you can plug the ends of hoses. You want to get this out. You also want to disconnect here from the return and empty this first. Treat yourself to a little hand pump and get the extra fluid out. Just watch you don't really spill from this section here. Leave the hose on the reservoir, take it off the pump, and maybe put a rag or two under here so you don't drip any power steering fluid around too much. You're going to want to definitely unbolt this bracket on your large hose for your air conditioning, because you're going to want to be able to move this to the right here in this direction when you end up bringing up your old alternator. This will be out of the way. You'll also have some cables here. This is just a clip that you will pull out. Pull out the clip where my finger is, and then that just lets this cable dangle around a bit. And the other thing that is really good is remove the dust cover. That gives you more space. This front dust cover too, it's pretty easy to take off of the tabs. Get this out of your way. You'll have a lot more room to see what you're doing. You will take off the brackets here that hold on the reservoir for the power steering. You want this bracket out of the way. You'll see instructions. You don't have to remove entirely from the bottom of the car through the wheel well. You do not. This is the, of course, your windshield wiper fluid tank. Just disconnect its upper neck bracket here. This will be able to flex and move in this direction. And by moving that way and then getting this hose over here, once you get your alternator unbolted, and there's going to be a top bracket on the bolt here. There's going to be a very long bolt here that will fit between really a clamping area on the engine. This is going to be a 14mm hex bolt, and the top one's going to be a 12. You'll definitely want to use a breaker bar to get those off. The alternator harness, it's just bolted also on a top, on this top mounting bracket in the alternator. It has a little bolt on it just to hold it on, and I think that might be probably 12mm. Under a boot here on the alternator is one of the electrical connectors, which will also have a bolt, and you can see that is going to go on here. There's also, the wire continues down to a snap clip here that you'll pull off. There's a single other wire lead that comes off the back of this. It has a little clip to hold the wire here. You're probably going to have to break the clip off, and it'll just be gone. But the wire continues down further, I believe, towards the air conditioner unit, and has a single clip on too. So you'll just be wrestling with those little clips a little bit, but you can get those off and then unbolt, get the harness and everything out of the way. I recommend that you just get some ropes, and you can sort of get this harness up out of the way, sort of tie it up and keep it out of your way. You'll want to use maybe a little piece of rope later on too. When you get your belt off, you'll want to just keep the belt loop up out of the way as well. That was useful. But we did not have to take this washing system container out of the car. And the trick to actually get the alternator, I have a nice shiny new alternator down here now. The trick is you're going to go between this large hose and this. And so what we found was it's going to come out in this orientation, and you're going to bring it out from the engine. Once you get it unbolted, kind of rotate it this way and then bring it upwards, and you'll sort of tilt this up as well. And the skinniest really passage is between here. This little ridge is going to be handy, because as you push this neck of the windshield washer tank to that side, this curve will just kind of fit in this groove here. And then on the other side, as you're pulling it up, you're going to be keeping this out of the way. You will find that if you get someone to help you to pull these items out of the way, so one person can kind of push this that way and struggle with getting up the alternator, you'll get it out. Going back in is easier because you're not fighting gravity. The other thing, two more issues with the alternator you want to be aware of is on the engine is a bracketing piece that this is going to slip into. And there is a bushing on here. It might be a plastic or a metal bushing on your new one that you get. We had a nice refurbished, rebuilt one. It has a metal split bushing in here. Measure this with calipers if you have them, and see if this is about the diameter of the one you pull out. If the other one's a little bit bigger, you might want to tap in the bushing a little bit and make them very similar. Then what I would do is just put on, what my son did was put on some anti-seize zinc compound on here on either side. So when that went back down into the bracket on the engine, if it is still a little bit tight, just wiggling it with the anti-seize will tend to get that bushing set in, and you'll be able to slip it into place when you put it back in the system. The other thing is really get yourself a tool for releasing the tensioner pressure, where the tensioner you're going to basically use a tool that looks like this. This tool is useful. It's set up so that you can use it on all kinds of vehicles. You can use it direct. You can put basically a socket directly onto here, or you can use this in various angles and extend the length. This is made for different trucks and vans. For the Honda, it's just the straight bar with the nut on the tensioner. And when that's down mounted on mine, it uses one of the bolts right on the top tensioner wheel. Pushing forward releases the tension. You will also find when you're first getting the alternator to come out, if you have somebody help you and release the tensioner, move the tensioner wheel back, that extra little space will really help you get the alternator out and turned around and to bring it up. And then it's also useful going back in the same way. Other than that, those are the things to do, to watch for. It is true you don't have to go in and remove the whole washer bottle to get your alternator in and out, but it is a job that is handy if you have an extra set of hands and a friend helping you out. One other issue that you will find with some of the alternators that I want you to know about. So this is the original that came out of this 2010 Honda Odyssey. On this electrical mount, of course the cable just has a round mount that goes on and gets bolted on. Notice there's a little indentation up here because there's an actual tab. So rather than just being a circular electrical connection, it also has a little tab on it. The new one you get might not have this recessed. It might be just a solid wall here, and this tab will make it really hard to get your electrical connection back on. The tab is, though, it's pretty soft metal. Just use regular wire snips. If it has a tab on it, just cut off the extra little tab on the connector so it's just purely circular, and then you'll be able to slide that back on and bolt it onto your new system, because a lot of them don't have this recessed tab. This recessed tab is really more for just making sure during assembly in the factory that workers are sliding on the cable from the right direction, and just basically getting it oriented properly so they can mount it. But on the replacements, they usually don't have this unless you actually go and buy a Honda one new from the Honda dealer. So that's all the issues you need to know about. When this fired back up, everything's fine. You know, voltage is high at the battery. This system is charging. The battery lights off. The panel's okay. So that's what you can do with a Honda Odyssey alternator replacement.